What's up guys and welcome back to the channel, and we're here with another card build, and I'm going to be matchmaking a hypothetical card for the UFC's inevitable return to Japan, because obviously Tatsuro Taira just won yesterday or the other day in the main event against Alex Perez. Kaya Sakura recently got signed to the UFC. There's some other high level Asian fighters. There's also a couple other fighters in the UFC right now that have come over from Ryzen in the past. If you don't know, obviously, Ryzen is a Japanese MMA organization. If you somehow don't know that, casual. But yeah, we're going to be matchmaking an entire 14-fight card. I'm going to say this is a fight night, I guess. It arguably could be a pay-per-view because I'm going to stack the fuck out of this thing. And I'll explain every pick. I'll talk about who I would probably pick in the fights. But yeah, let's get into it. Now, right off the bat, Manel Kape is fighting Muhammad Mokaev, and I believe he's going to win that fight. And if he does, Manel Kape is a Ryzen alumni. He came over from Ryzen into the UFC. It was a big signing, and I'm booking him against Alessandro Pantoja, assuming that he wins. And yes, this is a fucking fight night. I don't give a shit. Flyweights, this is what the UFC should do. Men's flyweight fights, and then WMMA should be headlining fight nights. It should not be on pay-per-views. Men's flyweight fights can be co-mains of pay-per-views, but we should make this the main event of a fight night in Japan because this is how you stack the fuck out of it. Because I'm not trying to do like just Tatsuro Taira and just Kaya Sakura and then the rest of it's just bums. Like, that's boring. So this is a stacked card, and we're doing a title fight as the main event of a fight night. Kape versus Pantoja. It's a rematch. They did fight earlier around when Kape came into the UFC. Pantoja obviously won, but this would be a banger of a fight to rebook. I'm saying you do this card around November, maybe November, December, October, November, December kind of time, and obviously in Japan, in Tokyo, I guess, or anywhere in Japan. But Kape is fighting at the end of July. So if he wins that, August, September, October, November. If you do this around late November, this could be like a 4-month turnaround for Manel Kape. I know for him, he doesn't fight very often, but I think that's pretty reasonable. So you do this fight, this would be sick. Look, I'm not expecting the UFC to do this. This is not a realistic card. This is what I would do. Like, if I was like, all right, we haven't been to Japan in fucking ages, we got to do a stacked card for our return, this is what you do. You put a fucking title fight as the main event. And even though neither guy is Japanese, Kape has a fan base, major fan base over there from his Ryzen days. And yeah, he'd get a good reception. So that's why, if you don't know why I'm putting Manel Kape, a Angolan Portuguese fighter, in the fucking main event against a Brazilian, then that's why. So yeah, Manel Kape versus Pantoja, main event of this fight night. Let's move on though to the co-main event. Tatsuro Taira coming off a big win. He's going to be ranked in the UFC's top 5 probably next week. Obviously the fan rankings, we have him a little bit lower because we have Steve Erceg ranked in the top 5, and I've got Mokaev above him, and you guys voted for this, by the way, so don't come at me. This is a thing that the public votes for. You guys voted for this. But whatever. He's number 5 in the UFC rankings, and I believe he should fight Brandon Moreno, who said he wanted to take a break. But I don't know if that means like out for the whole year. Maybe it means coming back end of the year. If he doesn't want to fight this year, all right, fair enough. You could just do like a Royval or someone like that. But I think there's a clear way to matchmake for the flyweight division. You do Mokaev versus Kape, winner against Pantoja. You do Royval versus Albazi. You do Kai Kara France versus Steve Erceg. You do Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Moreno. That's my opinion. That's a pretty clear way to matchmake the top of flyweight. And yeah, Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Moreno, he needs one more. You don't put this guy in a title shot after that. He looked good, but it's not like he just completely ran through Perez in 5 seconds and just subbed him immediately. Like, it's not like he just had the most flawless performance imaginable. He's young as well. You don't want to rush this guy into a title shot like a Darren Till against Woodley and then just have him look not good enough and get exposed, kind of. So yeah, make this fight happen. Do this fight. It'll be cool. It's a banger. And I do think Taira would win, to be honest. I'd pick Pantoja against Kape, by the way, if I forgot to mention my prediction for that. But yeah, I'd probably pick Taira to beat Moreno. I don't love Moreno's takedown defense. He got taken down and got his back taken by Pantoja. And I do think Pantoja's jiu-jitsu is better than Taira. But I actually think Taira's wrestling might be better. And I think he's a little bit quicker with the transitions. They're pretty similar. That's why I would love to see those two fight down the line. But Moreno versus Taira, I might pick Taira by sub, to be honest, because Moreno did get his back taken by Pantoja, and if you get your back taken by Taira, it could be wraps for you. Like, I know he survived with Pantoja on his back, but I don't know, something tells me the Moreno we saw trying to defend his belt ain't going to be... This Moreno now is just not going to be quite as hungry to, like, really fight out of a submission and really grit down. Like, I don't know. I just don't think he survives if he gets in that same position again, if he's not the champion. So, yeah, I would pick Taira to win, probably. But it would be a really good fight. You got to put Tatsuro Taira on this card when they go back to Japan. You could easily do him as the main event. Look, I'm overstacking this card. If you take this main event off, it's still a banger fight night card with what I'm going to go with underneath this. But yeah, this is a suitable main event, suitable co-main, whatever. You could do this as a 5-round co-main event, to be honest. So yeah, make this fight happen, and it would be very fun. Let's move on, though, to the next fight. Kai Asakura is making his debut, obviously, in the UFC. It's not announced, is not booked. And I think there is a definite possibility that he might end up fighting Song Yadong. That is a possibility. And I was going to do that for the main event of this card and be like, oh, Chinese versus Japanese, easy Asian on Asian crime main event. I don't know why I said that. But I was going to do that. But then I was like, I want to stack this card, and so it's easier to do them both fighting separate opponents than fight themselves, and then or fight each other, and then you take one possible, like, really good fight off the card. So I think what's actually going to happen, I think the UFC is going to fumble this, and the UFC isn't going to go to Japan this year. But if they do, and they do the right thing, I think you could do this fight. Cejudo versus Kai Asakura. Cejudo's a big name. He's a top 5 guy. And also, when the report came out that he was signed, it said the UFC's working on a top 5 opponent for him. So I was thinking of doing like a striker and giving him like a really winnable striking fight, like a Rob Font, or maybe like one of those guys. But I think Cejudo, he probably wouldn't take this, to be honest. But it's a big name. It's a really cool fight to have on the card. I think Kai would probably win just because I think his striking's really good. And I don't think Cejudo actually wrestles that much, honestly, in fights. Like, he takes down some people, but I don't know. I feel like he'll just hang out on the feet for too long and he could get caught. But also, yeah, you don't need to baby Kai Asakura. Like, you can't be like, okay, let's build this guy up. Like, it's basically been reported he's going to get like a top 10, top 5 opponent. So you can't just little handpick the easiest opponent possible. And also, everyone else in top 5. Sandhagen's booked. Marab's fighting O'Malley. O'Malley's obviously fighting Marab. Peter Yan is injured for ages. I think he's going to be out for a hot minute. Figueiredo's fighting Cheeto. Like, I feel like Cejudo's probably the best option, to be honest. So I don't know who I'd pick. I really haven't watched many Kai Asakura fights. I've watched some of his highlights, but I'd be lying if I told you that I'm like 100% across this guy's style in his fights. I know he's a good striker. He's powerful as fuck. He's really powerful. Great striker. Little bit open on the feet. Little bit chinny from what I've seen. I don't know how his takedown defense is. I assume Cejudo could probably get him down, but across 3 rounds, I think he could get back up, do the damage on the feet, but I don't know. This is a good fight, though, to add to the card. Cejudo's calling out Rob Font like a fucking retard. Like, fuck off. So yeah, make this fight happen in Japan. It'll be a cool debut for Kai Asakura, but I think they're going to end up doing Kai Asakura versus Song Yadong in Australia, because I don't know why. I guess Australia is where you want to put a Japanese and a Chinese person to make them fight, but that's fine. The UFC does this, same with when they did Wei Li versus Yan Zhanan, and they did it in America, instead of just doing a China card. It's fine, though. Let's move on, though, to the next fight. Next up, this fight is being made, so I've got Yuri Prohaska versus Carlos Ulberg. Now, this is on the condition that Yuri Prohaska loses to Alex Pereira and Carlos Ulberg beats Anthony Smith. So I'm kind of double fantasy matchmaking, like double crystal ball picking this fight, to be honest, because obviously they've both got fights on the same card. On the other hand, though, if Yuri Prohaska beats Alex Pereira, this is what you do for the card. You do Yuri Prohaska versus Alex Pereira 3, do the trilogy in Japan, and Yuri main event. That would be fucking sick, because Yuri's got that rising background. That's why he's here too. You know how much Yuri loves his samurai background. You know how much Yuri is a big fan of the Japanese culture. He fought in Rise a bunch. All the Japanese people love him, I'm sure. So yeah, bring this guy over there against Carlos Ulberg. Just have a fucking striking match, and these two can just sling him, and just have a banger on the feet. This would be a sick fight. I'd probably pick Yuri, to be honest, because even though Ulberg's probably the more technical striker, Ulberg does seem like his heart ain't the best, and I don't know if he KOs Yuri flat out. And if you can't KO Yuri, then he's just going to come back and break you. And I think it would look kind of similar to the Rakic fight, but I don't think Ulberg's as good as Rakic. But whatever. Still, this would be a banger. Yuri in Japan needs to happen. This would be a great fight and stack the card even more. But if Yuri wins against Pereira, do the trilogy and then do Yuri versus Alex in Japan. That's what you do. That'd be fucking nuts. Let's move on though to another fight. Next up on the card, Song Yadong versus Rob Font. Now, this is not going to happen 100%. Like, again, when I make this card, I'm not assuming, this is not me doing, like, let's do some realistic assumptions of what might happen. This is almost just like a future crystal ball fucking card. Like, if I could just put any fighters in Japan right now, this is what I would do. Song Yadong versus Rob Font is a banger, but as you probably saw all the leaks going around of saying, like, it showed one half of the board for 305 and Song Yadong was there in the co-main event slot, and that's why I think it's going to be him versus Kaya Sakura, because I just don't know who else. Maybe Cejudo, I guess, but I just don't know who else they would do him in the co-main event of a pay-per-view. Like, Kaya Sakura, if they're going to debut him and it's not in Japan, co-main event of a pay-per-view seems pretty likely. But apart from that, Song Yadong is on that card. So it seems like, it's not confirmed, but it seems like that's what the UFC wants to do with Song Yadong. Put him on that Australia card. But if I had my way, I would go and put him against Rob Font in Japan. Obviously, we know Song's Chinese. Font has no connection to Asia whatsoever. But still, Song Yadong, Japan, China, close together, good enough. And this would be a banger. These two were booked before for 292 in Boston. Song Yadong pulled out, and then Font had to go replace Umar, who pulled out, and he fought Sandhagen and got wrestle-fucked. But I don't think anyone's going to wrestle anyone in this fight. I think this would be a pure striking affair. I think Song would fucking chin him brutally because I don't rate Rob Font's chin, and his striking defense is questionable as fuck. And Song is looking technical and looking competitive with Jan and Sandhagen compared to Font, who is getting beaten up and put through a blender against Chito Vera, who's not good at all. So yeah, make this fight happen. I think Song would chin him, but that's good. You want some like highlight reel, some showcase performances for your Asian fighters on this card. Let's move on though to another fight. Next up, Josh Van versus Matt Schnell. Now, Josh Van is from Myanmar or Burma, wherever you like, whatever you call it. It's a country in Southeast Asia if your geography is awful. For my American viewers, shout out. Don't get offended in the comments. I'm sure you know where Mexico is. But, what's it called? Josh Van versus Matt Schnell. This would be a very fun fight. I think Josh Van would fucking smoke Matt Schnell and KO him. But that's the point. Josh Van keeps fucking getting his opponents pulling out of fights. It's never his fault. He's never pulled out of the fight. He was booked on short notice to fight. That guy pulled out. He was booked against Sumadaji. Sumadaji pulled out. That's a fight I would do in Japan too, him versus Sumadaji. But I think Josh Van's past that now, even though he hasn't actually fought since then. Just the fact that he's getting booked against top-ranked guys, or like top 10 guys, or near top 10, and then they're pulling out. I think Sumadaji, even though he is in the UFC rankings, I just don't think he's at that level where he should be fighting anyone like good. I don't know. But Josh Van should fight Matt Schnell, because Matt Schnell has to fight down. He's coming off losses. He's not looked good in his fights. He needs to show up and do something. I think he would get absolutely fucking folded in half by Josh Van. The boxing is just going to be a nightmare for him. But yeah, Josh Van, he's an Asian fighter. And again, this isn't. I know that Southeast Asia is not really that close to Japan, but you can put a bunch of Asian fighters. Like, I'm going to have some South Koreans on here. I'm going to have some Chinese, some Japanese, all of that. So you can get a few different countries from Asia, get them represented on this card, and you can get some people from Myanmar over, because Josh Van is the only fighter from that country in the UFC. So I'm sure his countrymen would definitely come over and watch him fight. And yeah, he's in tap with the Asian scene. He fought, what's it called? Why am I saying Wing Chun? Lethwei. He had a Lethwei background, I'm pretty sure, similar Muay Thai sort of style. He'd definitely have fans in the Asian scene in Asia that would come and watch him fight. So yeah, do this fight. I think it would be a banger. I want to see Josh Van fight before then, to be honest. Like, you can do him versus some fucking unranked guy on 303 for all I care. Do him on any of these cards, but then in the future, I want to see this guy fight in Asia and see the reception he gets, because I definitely think he's got the potential to be a star. But let's move on to another fight. Next up on the card, Rinya Nakamura, one of the better prospects out of Japan. Taira's probably number one, and I would say he's number two in terms of Japanese prospects, because Kaya Sakura obviously is very good, but not really a prospect. But Rinya Nakamura's got some wins in the UFC. He's undefeated. He's a road to UFC guy, obviously fought a couple of times, fought on 298. He hasn't looked amazing. He's doing very wrestling heavy, very like control heavy fights, but he's still impressive. He's athletic as fuck. He's got power as well on the feet. I think just because of his wrestling style, he was an Olympic wrestler. But I think that style, he doesn't have the best submissions. It's similar to Bo Nickel. But I say you do him versus Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann is a wrestler as well, coming off a loss to Taylor Lapulus just a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, it would be a good way to test the wrestling if he could just run through Cody Stamann, who's a real stubby, short guy, a real wrestling, stocky build, and he just runs through him on the ground. That'd be a really good win for him to have. And then it's a jump up, because you don't want to rush this guy too much and give him someone with fucking brick wall takedown defense. But I don't know. Cody Stamann, I think he's a guy that Rinya could pretty comfortably beat. Let's move on though to another fight. Next up, Yoon Park, the Iron Turtle versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Yoon Park, obviously South Korean, so yeah, right, very close to Japan. Surely your geography can't be that bad, American viewers. But yeah, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, pretty lower level middleweight. I think this would be a fight that's very winnable for Park. Easy showcase for him. I think he takes Mikhail down pretty comfortably, subs him. But yeah, you want to get some guys, some Asian guys, Japanese, South Korean, Chinese guys, all on this card and get him some easy wins, get him some showcase performances. So yeah, that's a good fight to add. And he's not like a big name, but he's a guy that's known amongst the hardcore fans. It's a fan favorite amongst the hardcore fans. So yeah, let's move on though to another fight. Next up, we got Hyun-Sung Park versus Sumadaji. Obviously, we got South Korean versus Chinese crime, violence, whatever. Asian on Asian violence. This will be a banger, I think, because Hyun-Sung Park, his boxing is really crisp. He pieced up Shannon Ross, beat him up. Obviously, Shannon Ross, bit of a can. But Sumadaji, he gets in fun fights. His chin is questionable as fuck. He had a war with Matt Schnell, was rocking him a bunch. He's still a very fun fighter. He lost to Tim Elliott recently, but got grappled. But this will be a striking fight for the most part, I reckon. It'll be a banger. You got two Asian guys again to put on the card. And yeah, either the Chinese fans are going home happy or the South Korean fans are going home happy. So yes, you might ask, where's the Japanese fighter? Too fucking bad. There's none of them in the UFC that are that good. It's like Taira and Nakamura, and that's it. All the other ones are shit. But let's move on to another fight. Zhang Mingyang versus Da Woon Jung. Another Chinese versus South Korean violence affair. I think Zhang Mingyang would fucking spark this cunt unconscious. If you don't know Zhang Mingyang, he got a massive KO over Brenson Herberio on UFC 298, flatlined him with a nice left hook. And then Dawoon Jung lost to Carlos Olberg, almost took him the distance, but then the fight got overturned to a submission because he actually tapped in a rear naked choke, but then just didn't go out. So that pretty much tells everyone, don't tap to subs, because if you don't go out, you're going to look like a retard. So yeah, don't tap to submissions, unless it's like arm or leg, or unless your joint is going to snap. Don't tap to chokes. But this would be a banger. These guys are going to swing it on the feet, I reckon. Dawoon Jung, he's got half-decent grappling, but not really. Carlos Olberg's not a grappler, and he's subbed him. So, yeah, Dawoon Jung versus Zhang Mingyang, they're going to swing it on the feet. They're just going to be yelling fucking slurs at each other, just calling each other chinks and stuff. I probably wasn't meant to say that, but whatever. I'll edit that out. Let's move on, though, to another fight. Next up, we finally have another Japanese fighter on here. We got Rei Tsusura, who's fighting in a couple weeks or next weekend on UFC 303 against Carlos Hernandez. And I've booked him, assuming he gets the dub, against CJ Vergara, who is a pretty low-level, unranked flyweight. Bit of a victim. And I haven't seen Rei Tsusura fight much, but I think he should smoke Carlos Hernandez. If he does, then you can try and he's undefeated too, so you can get behind him as another Japanese prospect, I guess. Slow roll him. CJ Vergara ain't good. So yeah, this would be a pretty winnable fight for the dude. Let's move on though to another fight. Next up, Toshiomi Kazama versus Aori Trelang. Japanese on Chinese crime. Obviously, this would be a great fight. I think this would be a banger. Kazama, pretty low level, lost both of his UFC fights. Who cares? Aori Chalang's not that great either. He'd probably win, but who gives a fuck? Let's move on to another fight. Yusaku Kinoshita versus Pete Rodriguez. Now, I didn't know until just before, but Kinoshita actually has a fight booked. When I was doing the layout for this video, I didn't know, but he actually has a fight booked against Johnny Parsons, who's a bum, so if you can't beat him, you're cooked. He'll probably get cut. But if he does beat him, Pete Rodriguez probably the next lowest level welterweight you can find. Get him a showcase win, should get the KO. Let's move on though to another fight. Mizuki Inoue versus Luma Lookboom. We got some Japanese on Thai crime here, another Asian on Asian violence affair. Or this probably wouldn't be violent, this would probably be a good 15 minutes of sparring. But yeah, good fight. Japanese fighter Inoue not that great, but she's lost to some good competition like Lemos and Verna Jandaroba. And then, what's it called? Loma Lookboom's a good fighter too. So yeah, that's the card though. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what fights you would want to see on a hypothetical UFC Japan card. I think I did a pretty good job. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Follow my Instagram, Left Lane MMA. Subscribe again. I think I said that. But yeah, peace out.